Hey guys, tonight we head south, down to the Texas flatlands, where the sun is a cruel white eye in the sky, and the dust is so fine it gets into your blood. This is a place where the silence is heavier than a tombstone, and the only music is the creak of a windmill pulling nothing but dust from a dry well. The shadows are long, and the memories are longer. Out here, trouble doesn't always come riding in with guns blazing. Sometimes it comes in the form of a quiet poison, a hatred so deep, and still it can choke the life out of a town and everyone. In it, you'll need a strong heart for this one because you probably won't survive this ride without it breaking. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do. Here, I love to hear where these tailies find you, so feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lean against the splintered porch post of the general store, the wood warm against your back. The brim of your plain, dusty, go-to-hell hat is pulled down low, not just to block the oppressive glare of the afternoon sun, but to hide the contempt in your eyes. This is the town of Harmony Creek, and its name is the cruelest joke you've ever heard. There is a peace here, it's true, but it is the rigid, silent peace of a graveyard, a peace built on a foundation of unwritten rules and unspoken hatreds. You are an outsider here, a hired hand on a ranch miles out of town, a drifter whose past is his own business. You are a part of this town's economy, but you are not part of its soul, and for that, you are quietly grateful. It gives you the distance to see things as they are. And you see her. She walks down the center of the dusty main street. Her name is Sarah, and she is a freedwoman, a person whose very existence is a crime in the eyes of this town. She is not a beggar. She is not a supplicant. She is a woman of profound, unshakable dignity. Her dress is patched but clean. Her shoulders are straight. Her head is held high. She is on her way to the creek to do her washing, a simple, necessary chore. As she walks, a silent, coordinated cruelty unfolds. Mr. Henderson, the store owner, who had been sweeping his porch, suddenly finds a spot of dirt at his feet that requires his absolute, unwavering attention. Two women, gossiping by the water trough, turn their backs to her in a single, fluid motion, their conversation never ceasing, as if she were nothing more than a gust of wind. The men loafing in the shade of the saloon's awning fall silent, their eyes going hard and flat, looking through her as if she were made of glass. It is a public execution of the spirit. They are not threatening her with violence. They are doing something far crueler. They are erasing her. They are pretending she does not exist. This is the bitter legacy of Reconstruction, a war that ended on the battlefield but continues in the hearts of men. The town of Harmony Creek enforces its own brutal black codes, not with laws on paper, but with a wall of silent, suffocating contempt. The American myth loves to celebrate the rugged individual, the man who stands alone against the world. You look at the townsfolk of Harmony Creek, and you see the lie in that myth. They are not individuals. They are a mob, a herd, their actions dictated by a desperate, fearful need to conform. The one true individual on this street is Sarah. Her lonely, defiant walk is an act of courage so profound it makes her own heart ache. And you are the town's other secret. You are the one who does not look away. You watch her. You see the subtle tightening of the muscles in her jaw as she passes the saloon. You see the way her hands clench into fists at her sides, hidden in the folds of her dress. You see the immense, crushing weight of their collective hatred pressing down on her, and you see her refuse to bend, refuse to break. She completes her walk, her head still held high, and disappears down the path that leads to the creek. The moment she is out of sight, The town exhales. Mr. Henderson resumes his sweeping. The women turn back to their gossip. The men at the saloon start talking again. The illusion of harmony is restored, but something has been broken. You push yourself off the porch post, the quiet observer who has just become a witness. To see such a thing is to be made complicit in it, unless you act. The town has made her invisible. But you saw her, and the act of seeing her, of truly seeing her strength and her pain, has just drawn a line in the dust of your own soul. You have to decide which side of it you are on. The days that follow are a quiet lesson in the many forms of cruelty. From the porch of the general store or the shade of the livery stable, you watch. You watch as the wall of silence the town has built around Sarah becomes a cage designed to starve her out. She is a woman of immense skill and pride. You learn this by watching. You see the fine, meticulous stitches on her own patched dress, and know she is a seamstress. You see the small, perfectly tended herb garden she tries to coax from the unforgiving soil behind her dilapidated cabin, and know she is a gardener. One morning, the scent of baking bread, so rich and wonderful it makes your own stomach ache, drifts from her chimney. She is a woman who creates, who builds, who tries to make a life from nothing. And the town of Harmony Creek is determined to let her nothing be the end of her. You see her walk to the hotel, hoping for work as a laundress. The owner meets her at the back door, speaks to her for a moment with a look of feigned regret, and shakes his head. You see her approach the wife of the town banker, a woman known for her piety, and offer her services as a seamstress. The woman smiles a tight, cold smile and closes the door in her face. This is the brutal economic reality that followed the promises of Reconstruction. A freed woman like Sarah is, by law, free, but she is trapped in a system designed to keep her dependent and poor. The refusal of work, the social ostracism, it is an unwritten law, a version of the sharecropping system's economic strangulation, applied not in a cotton field, but on a dusty town street. It ensures that she remains powerless, unable to build the independent life she seeks. The most painful lesson comes one afternoon inside the general store. You are there to buy some ammunition, standing in the back by the barrels of nails, when Sarah enters. The store, which had been filled with the low hum of conversation, falls silent. She walks to the counter, her steps proud and sure, and places 2 small coins on the wood. "A small bag of flour, please, Mr. Henderson," she says, her voice quiet but clear. Henderson, the store owner, a man with a perpetually nervous sweat on his brow, looks at her, then at the coins, then at the other customers who are now pretending to inspect the shelves with rapt attention. He gives her a weak, apologetic smile. "Flour's gone up, Sarah," he says, his voice a low mumble. "Drought's been hard. That'll only get you the half scoop." He proceeds to sell her a half-filled bag of the lowest grade, weevil-filled flour for the price of the best. Then she asks for milk. He ladles out a pint of thin, watery, Blue John skimmed milk, so poor it's almost transparent, and charges her the price of fresh cream. You stand in the shadows, and you watch this quiet, humiliating act of theft, and you understand the true nature of the evil in this town. It is not just the overt hatred of a few loud bigots. It is the silent, complicit participation of men like Henderson. This is not just individual prejudice. It is a structural racism so deeply ingrained that a man can cheat a woman to her face and still see himself as a decent citizen. He is just a man of business after all, and the unspoken rules of Harmony Creek say that her money is worth less than anyone else. Single quotes S. Sarah takes the meager provisions without a word of protest. She does not beg. She does not bargain. To do so would be to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She simply takes her bag, her back as straight as a rifle barrel, and walks out. You finish your purchase, your own transaction swift and fair, the contrast a bitter taste in your mouth. You step back out onto the porch and watch her walk back to her cabin at the edge of town. She is a ghost, haunting the edges of a town that is trying its best to kill her. That evening, as dusk settles, you find yourself looking toward her small cabin. No lamp is lit. She is saving the oil, you realize. She is sitting in the dark, rationing her food, rationing her hope. The wall of silence has become a siege, and they are starving her out. You stand there for a long time, the weight of your own silence, your own inaction, pressing down on you. To be a witness is one thing. To stand by and watch a slow murder is another. The ghosts of your own past begin to stir, whispering of a time before when you stood by and did nothing. You will not make that mistake again. The wall around her is thick and high, but you decide in that moment that you will find a way to pass a stone of kindness over it. That night you cannot find sleep. You sit on the edge of your narrow bunkhouse cot. The sounds of the other ranch hands snores alow, rumbling counterpoint to the racing of your own mind. The image of Sarah in the general store is burned into your memory. Her quiet dignity, the storekeeper's casual cruelty, the town's wall of silent complicity. It is the silence that unnerves you the most. It is the silence that opens the door to the ghosts. You stand and walk out onto the porch, into the thick, humid Texas night. The air is heavy, promising a storm that never comes. You lean against a rough-hewn post and let the memory you've spent years trying to outrun finally catch you. Another town, a lifetime ago. A place in the deep piney woods of East Texas. You were just a kid then, barely 18, working a cattle drive and passing through. The air that night was just like this one, heavy and electric, but it wasn't a storm that was brewing. It was a mob. You remember their faces in the flickering torchlight. They weren't monsters. They were men you'd seen in the church that morning, men who had tipped their hats to you on the street. Farmers, shopkeepers, fathers. But they had been transformed by a shared, poisonous hatred into a single mindless beast. A young black sharecropper had been accused of insulting a white woman. A lie. You knew it was a lie, but the truth didn't matter. The mob had a thirst, and only blood would quench it. This is the terrible truth of the bystander effect, a modern name for an ancient cowardice. When a single man is a wolf, other men might stand against him. But when the whole town becomes a wolf pack, a man's courage dissolves. Responsibility diffuses, spreading so thin it disappears entirely. You were there. You were armed. And you did nothing. You stayed in the shadows of an alleyway, your heart hammering against your ribs, a silent, terrified witness to a lynching. They dragged the young man from the sheriff's flimsy jail. You remember the sounds, the splintering of the door, the man's pleas, and the low guttural roar of the mob as it surged toward the old oak tree at the edge of town. You can still see the image of his hands, reaching out, pleading, before they were swallowed by the crowd. The gruesome folklore of the hand of glory, a hanged man's hand turned into a magical, evil relic, flashes through your mind. That night, you felt as though you saw that dark magic being born, the transformation of ordinary men into something hellish. You did not follow them to the tree, but you heard the silence that came after the roar, a silence just like the one that hangs over Harmony Creek, a silence of a crime committed and collectively ignored. You fled that town at dawn, but you never escaped the memory. The ghost of that young man and the ghost of the coward you were that night have ridden with you ever since. It is the reason you keep to yourself. It is the reason you drift. You feel unworthy of community, of connection. You snap back to the present, your hand clenched so tight around the porch post that your knuckles are white. The air is still. The night is quiet. But you see it now with a terrible clarity. Harmony Creek is the same town, the same mob. They are just quieter in their cruelty. They are not using a rope. They are using starvation and shame. The crime is the same. The victim is different, but her only sin, like the young man's, is the color of her skin. The historical texts will call this the era of Reconstruction, a time of supposed healing and rebuilding after the Great War. But you know the truth. You are living it. For people like Sarah, it is not a time of reconstruction, but of a new, more insidious kind of destruction. You look out into the darkness, toward the distant, sleeping town. You have been given a second chance. The world has presented you with the same test, and the ghost at your shoulder is whispering, demanding to know what you will do this time. Will you be a bystander again? Will you let your fear chain you to the porch while another innocent soul is crushed by the weight of a town's hate? A hard, cold resolve settles in your gut, solidifying your guilt into a purpose. You failed once. You will not fail again. You will not let Sarah become another ghost to haunt your waking nights. You owe it to the memory of the boy you let die. You owe it to the last, tattered shred of your own soul. Your time as a silent witness is over. Your vigil of inaction has ended. You look out at the dark horizon, and you begin to form a plan. It will start with a small, secret act. A kindness. In the dark. A single stone thrown against the town's wall of silence. Your resolve, forged in the fires of a guilty memory, demands action. You spend the next day going about your duties at the ranch, but your mind is in Harmony Creek. You are no longer just a passive observer. You are a hunter, searching for an opportunity, a weakness in the town's armor of hate, a way to deliver your first quiet act of rebellion. You find it that afternoon. You've ridden into town for a sack of feed, and you see her. Sarah is struggling with a wagon, a small, dilapidated buckboard that is her only significant possession. It sits near her cabin at the edge of town, a symbol of both her journey here and her current inability to leave. One of the rear wheels is canted at an awkward angle, its iron tire loose and slipping from the wooden rim. It is effectively crippled. You watch from a distance as she approaches the town blacksmith, a hulking, sullen man named Beaudry, whose prejudice is as open and ugly as the soot on his face. She speaks to him, gesturing to the broken wheel. He listens for a moment, his arms crossed over his massive chest. Then he laughs, a short, barking sound of contempt, shakes his head, and turns his back on her, disappearing into the smoky darkness of his forge. The rejection is public, absolute, and economically fatal. Without a working wagon, she cannot haul water, cannot gather firewood, cannot leave. He has, with a single gesture, sentenced her to a slow, stranded death. She stands there for a long moment, absorbing the blow, then turns and walks back to her cabin with her back ramrod straight. This is your opening. You are no cowboy aristocrat, but you've lived a life on the trail. You know horses, you know leather, and you know the inner workings of a wagon. Wagon maintenance is a fundamental skill for survival out here, as vital as knowing how to use a gun. And you will use that skill tonight. You wait until the moon is high and the town is a collection of dark, sleeping shapes. You gather a few tools from the ranch workshop, a heavy mallet, a set of wooden wedges, a long iron pry bar, and make your way to the edge of town. The air is cool and silent, the only sound the chirping of crickets. Her wagon sits in the moonlight, a patient, wounded animal. You approach it with the stealth of a man who knows how to move without being seen. You lay out your tools on a piece of sackcloth to mute any sound. The job is difficult without the heat of a forge to expand and reset the iron tire. You must rely on leverage and force. You use the pry bar to lift the axle, propping it on a block of wood. The wheel groans in protest. The old-timers had superstitions about the sounds a wagon makes, a folk practice of prognostication by wheels. A groaning axle, they'd say, foretold a hard journey. You work to silence that omen. The iron tire has slipped because the wooden fellows, the curved segments of the wheel's rim, have shrunk in the dry, hot air. The entire structure is loose. You work with a focused, methodical patience. You use the small wedges and the mallet, tapping them gently into the joints between the felloes and the spokes, slowly, carefully expanding the wooden wheel until it is tight and true once more. It is the work of an artisan, a craft that demands a feel for the wood, an understanding of pressure and tension. This act is a quiet refutation of the blacksmith's prejudice. The artisan ideal holds that a man's skill is a measure of his character. Badri, the blacksmith, betrayed that ideal. He let his hate compromise his craft. You, a simple cowboy, are now honoring it. You are proving that the true measure of a craftsman is his willingness to mend what is broken, regardless of who owns it. With the wooden structure now solid, you turn to the final, brutal task of reseating the iron tire. You use the pry bar, your muscles straining in the cool night air, to work the heavy iron ring back into its proper groove. The final inches are a war of wills, you against the unyielding nature of cold iron. With a final grunting heave, the tire snaps into place with a low, satisfying thud. You stand back, breathing heavily, and inspect your work. The wheel is solid. It is strong. It will hold. You gather your tools, wipe away any trace of your footprints in the dust, and slip back into the darkness. You are a ghost, leaving behind not a haunting, but a secret, unsigned miracle. The next morning, you find a reason to be in town. You watch from a block away as Sarah emerges from her cabin. She sees the wheel immediately. She stops, frozen. She approaches it slowly, cautiously, as if it were a trap. She runs her hand over the tight-fitting iron. She pushes against the solid spokes. You see the look of utter, baffled disbelief on her face, followed by a wave of dawning, tearful wonder. She looks up and down the empty street, searching for any sign of her anonymous savior. She finds nothing but the quiet morning. You turn your horse and ride away before she can see you, a fierce, protective satisfaction burning in your chest. You have just repaired more than a wheel. You have given her mobility. You have given her a tool for survival. You have given her the one thing this town has tried so desperately to take away, a sliver of hope. The repaired wagon wheel is a silent testament to your first act of defiance. But you learn quickly that mobility is not the same as survival. You watch from a distance as the days turn into a week. The wagon does not move. To leave would require money for supplies, a destination, and a hope that the next town would be any different from this one. Sarah has none of those things. So she stays, a prisoner of her pride and her poverty, and you watch as she grows thinner, the proud set of her shoulders seeming to carry a heavier weight each day. The town's economic siege is brutally effective. She is an island, and the tide of their hatred is rising, threatening to sweep her away. The ghost of the boy at the hanging tree whispers in your ear. You know, with a gut-deep certainty, that you cannot be a bystander again. You must act. Your intervention continues in the same way it began, in secret. You start a new routine. Every 3 days, you wake in the cold, gray darkness an hour before the other ranch hands. You move silently through the bunkhouse, gathering a small portion of your own meager supplies. A scoop of cornmeal from your sack, a handful of potatoes, a slab of salt pork wrapped in butcher paper. Sometimes, on your ride in, you manage to shoot a rabbit, and you add it to the parcel. It is not much, but it is the difference between starving and surviving. You ride toward Harmony Creek in the pre-dawn gloom, the world still asleep, You do not go to her cabin door. That is a line you will not cross, a risk too great for both of you. Instead, you use the wagon you repaired as your silent messenger. You tie the small sack of supplies to the brake lever, a place where the rain cannot touch it and where she is sure to find it. The first time, you worry she will refuse it, that her pride will be too strong. But the next day, the sack is gone. Your secret offering has been accepted. This becomes your ritual, a lifeline of food and supplies, delivered by a ghost before the sun rises. You are, in your own small, desperate way, acting as her own private freedman's bureau. That government agency, which was supposed to help former slaves find their footing with food, housing, and legal aid, was a distant memory. Its promises long since abandoned by the politicians back east. The federal safety net was gone. In its place was nothing but the cruelty of towns like this, and the conscience of a single, haunted cowboy. You begin to worry that she might think the offerings are a trap, a trick from someone in town. You need a way to communicate, to let her know the gifts are from a friend. Remembering the symbols drifters sometimes used to mark a safe town, you create your own secret sign. After leaving the food, you take a small piece of charcoal and draw two simple, parallel lines on the wagon side, low and out of sight. A journeyman's mark for equality, for two people walking the same path. It is a silent message. You and I, we are the same. We are outsiders. You are not alone. You wrestle with your own motives in the long, lonely hours. Are your actions a form of paternalism, the condescending charity of a white man saving a helpless black woman, reinforcing the very power structure you despise? The thought sickens you. No, you decide. That is not it. You look at Sarah, at her unbending pride and her fierce will to survive, and you do not see a helpless victim. You see an equal. This is not charity. This is mutual aid. It is an alliance of the shunned, a conspiracy of two against a world that has cast you both out. You are not saving her. You are fighting alongside her in the only way you know how. The risks are immense. If Baudry the blacksmith or Henderson the storekeeper were to see you, the word would spread like wildfire. You would lose your job. The ranch, the town's scorn, now directed at her, would turn on you with its full suffocating force. But the fear of that is nothing compared to the fear of the ghost at your shoulder, the memory of what happens when good men do nothing. One morning, the routine is almost broken. You have just finished placing the parcel and your two chalk lines on the wagon seat. The sky is just beginning to soften from black to a deep, bruised purple. As you turn to slip back into the shadows, you hear it. The faint, unmistakable creak of her cabin door opening. You freeze, your heart slamming against your ribs. You press yourself flat against the far side of the wagon, every muscle tense. You have been caught. You hear her soft footsteps on the porch, then in the dust. You hold your breath. She is so close you can hear the rustle of her dress. After a long, agonizing moment, you hear her pick up the sack. You hear a soft intake of breath. Then you hear her footsteps retreat and the quiet click of her cabin door closing. You wait, your heart pounding, for another full minute before daring to move. You slip away into the receding darkness, your escape unseen. But the close call is a warning. This secret game of ghosts and offerings cannot last forever. You have built a fragile bridge to her in the darkness, but soon you will have to find the courage to walk across it in the light. The secret ritual of the offerings continues for several weeks. It is a fragile, unspoken lifeline. But you know it is not a solution. You are merely treating a symptom, not the disease, and the disease of this town's hatred is spreading. Pressure from Judge Colton on the townsfolk is mounting, their fear of him outweighing any flicker of conscience. You can feel it in the air. The wall of silence around Sarah is hardening into something uglier, more aggressive. The time for secret kindness is coming to an end. The breaking point arrives, as it so often does, over the most mundane of necessities. A sack of flour. You are in Henderson's general store, waiting for him to weigh out a bag of nails. The place is the town's heart, a cluttered, dimly lit room that smells of coffee beans, cured leather, and dust. The usual group of old-timers are gathered around the cold pot-bellied stove, a silent and judgmental chorus, known as the Spit and Whittle Club. The bell above the door jingles, and Sarah walks in. A hush falls over the store. The whittling stops. The gossiping ceases. It is as if she has brought a vacuum of silence in with her. She ignores the stares, her face a mask of calm composure, and walks to the counter. She has a few coins clutched in her hand. Her supply of cornmeal, your last gift, has run out. A 10-pound sack of flour. "Please, Mr. Henderson," she says, her voice quiet but firm. Henderson, who is in the middle of weighing your nails, freezes. He looks from Sarah to the men at the stove, then back again. You can see the sweat bead on his forehead. He is a weak man, caught between the demands of commerce and the crushing weight of the town's unwritten laws. "I'm afraid I can't sell you any flour, Sarah," he says, his voice a low, miserable mumble. Sarah's composure does not break, but you see a flicker of desperation in her eyes. "I have money, Mr. Henderson." "It ain't about the money," he says, refusing to meet her gaze. He glances again toward the men at the stove, seeking their approval. "We're running low. Have to save our stock for regular customers." It is a lie, a pathetic and transparent one. The shelves behind him are groaning with sacks of flour. This is a public, official excommunication. This is economic coercion in its purest form, a tactic more effective than any threat of violence. They are denying her the right to buy food. They are sentencing her to starve, and the silent, complicit stares of every other customer in the store are the witnesses and the jury. The town's behavior is the functional equivalent of the worst Ku Klux Klan intimidation, a slow, quiet lynching by starvation, all carried out without a single mask or raised voice. You feel the ghost of the boy at the hanging tree rise up inside you, its cold fingers closing around your heart. You see the faces of the men in that mob, and you see the same cowardly conformity in the faces of the men around this stove. And you know with absolute certainty that you will not be a bystander again. You step forward from the back of the store, your boots heavy on the creaking floorboards. The silence in the room deepens, becoming taut and electric. You walk to the counter and stand beside Sarah. You ignore her, and you ignore the men. You look directly at Henderson, your eyes as cold and hard as the nails he was about to weigh. "Henderson," you say, your voice a low, quiet rumble that is somehow more menacing than a shout. "Give me a 50-pound sack of your best flour." Relief floods the storekeeper's face. He is back on safe, familiar ground, serving a white man. "Right away, Jesse," he says, practically scurrying to heft the heavy canvas sack onto the counter. You count out the coins, the price far more than you can truly afford, and place them on the wood. Henderson bags your nails. You leave them sitting there. Then you turn. You look down at Sarah, whose face is a mixture of shock, confusion, and a new, dawning hope. You gently take her arm. With your other hand, you hoist the 50-pound sack of flour from the counter as if it weighed nothing. You guide her to the door, leaving the entire store in a state of stunned, absolute silence. As you pass the pot-bellied stove, you pause and look at the men sitting there, their knives and whittling sticks frozen in their hands. You hold their gaze for a long, cold moment, your contempt a palpable force in the room. Then you turn and walk out. You walk with her through the silent, watching town. The heavy sack of flour, a declaration of war, slung over your shoulder. You don't stop until you reach her cabin. You set the sack down on her small porch dot. She is looking at you, her eyes shining with unshed tears. It is not just gratitude you see there. It is the terrifying, beautiful, and deeply complicated recognition of an alliance that has just been irrevocably sealed in the light of day in front of the whole world. The secret is out. You have chosen your side, and you both know that the consequences are coming. The 50-pound sack of flour sits on the small table in Sarah's cabin like a declaration of war. Your public act of defiance at the general store echoes through the tense quiet of Harmony Creek. You have shattered the town's unspoken agreement. You have knocked a hole in their wall of silence. And now you wait for the architect of that wall to respond. You don't have to wait long. The summons comes the next afternoon, delivered to the ranch by a grim-faced deputy. It is not a request. It is a command to appear before Judge Colton at the town courthouse. You ride into town, the weight of what's to come heavy in the still, hot air. The judge's chambers are not the rough-hewn office of a frontier official. They are the refined sanctuary of a man of power and education. The walls are lined with leather-bound law books. The air smells of old paper and expensive whiskey, and a large, detailed map of the county hangs behind a massive oak desk. It is a room designed to intimidate, to remind any visitor of the owner's intellectual and legal authority. Judge Colton sits behind the desk, writing in a ledger. He is a man in his 60s, with a neatly trimmed white beard, a fine suit, and the soft, uncalloused hands of a man who has never had to labor for his living. He does not look up as you enter, forcing you to wait, a deliberate power play. He finishes a line of script, then carefully takes a pounce pot, a small silver shaker, and dusts the wetting with a fine powder to dry it, a meticulous, old-fashioned gesture of a man who values precision and control above all else. Finally, he looks up at you, his eyes a pale, cold blue. "Mr. Jesse," he says, his voice the smooth, educated drawl of a Southern gentleman. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." You remain standing. The judge sighs, a sound of feigned disappointment. "I will be direct," he says, steepling his fingers. "This town, Harmony Creek, is a delicate ecosystem. We have achieved a level of peace and prosperity here that is rare in this territory. And that peace is maintained by a clear and commonly understood social order, an order you disrupted yesterday. He is the perfect embodiment of the Redeemer ideology that has taken hold back in the South. He is a man who believes his God-given duty is to restore a rigid, hierarchical order to a world thrown into chaos by the war. He cloaks his prejudice in the language of stability, tradition, and the common good. The Negro woman, Sarah. He continues, the words dripping with condescension. Her presence here is a destabilizing influence. An independent freedwoman with no family, no sponsor. It gives people ideas. It disrupts the natural order of things. For the good of the community, she must be encouraged to move on. You stare at him, your own face a mask of stone. You are in a debate not just with a man, but with an entire philosophy of power. The judge believes in a twisted form of law, and order where the purpose of the law is to maintain the existing unjust social structure. Peace at any price, even the price of a woman's soul. You, on the other hand, are beginning to fight for justice. The radical idea that the law should protect the individual, especially the powerless, even if it disrupts a town's comfortable, cruel peace. She's done nothing wrong, you say, your voice a low, dangerous rumble. Her crime, the judge says, his voice turning hard as ice, is that she exists where she is not wanted. And your crime, son, is that you have chosen to associate yourself with her. You are a good ranch hand, a hard worker, but you are a drifter, replaceable. Do you understand what I am telling you? The warning is no longer veiled. It is a cold, sharp blade held to your throat. Stop helping her, the judge commands. Stop speaking to her. Let the town's will do its work. Let the natural order correct itself. If you do this, you may continue to have a place here. If you do not, well, this is a hard country. A man without a job, without friends. He often just disappears. You think of the ghost of the boy at the hanging tree. You think of your own cowardice that night. You have been running from that memory your entire adult life. And now you have finally been cornered by it. You can either run again, or you can turn and face it. She is a free woman, Judge, you say, your voice quiet but steady. This is supposed to be a free country. She has a right to be here. Judge Colton stares at you, a long, silent moment stretching between you. His mask of civility slips entirely, and for a second, you see the pure, unadulterated fury of a tyrant whose will has been defied. Then you have made your choice, he says, his voice a chilling whisper. He looks back down at his ledger. A final, absolute dismissal. See that you can live with it. You turn and walk out of the office, the weight of his threat settling upon you. You have been warned by the most powerful man in the county. You have been threatened with financial ruin and death. And you have just walked out of his office, having chosen to defy him completely. The battle of whispers and quiet gestures is over. The war is about to begin. You ride back to the ranch under the weight of Judge Colton's threat. His words, so polite and yet so final, echo in your mind. He is not a man of idle threats. You spend the next day in a state of high alert, every distant dust cloud on the Uste. Horizon a potential rider, every shadow a possible threat. You tell yourself your job is just to watch and wait. But the ghost of the hanging tree whispers a different story, a story of the terrible cost of waiting too long. On the second day, your anxiety gets the better of you. You ride into town, a slab of bacon and a small sack of beans wrapped in a saddlebag, another offering for the woman who has become the center of your undeclared war. You find her outside her small cabin, trying to reinforce the crumbling chimney with a mixture of mud and grass. She works with a slow, steady determination, an island of quiet industry in a town that wishes she would simply vanish. You are about to approach, to break your own rule, and speak to her in the daylight when you see him. The town sheriff, a portly, slow-moving man named Gable, who serves as Judge Colton's right hand, is walking toward the cabin. You pull your horse back into the cover of the thicket of mesquite, your hand resting on your pistol. The sheriff stops a few feet from Sarah. He does not look threatening. He looks uncomfortable, his eyes shifting nervously. He is a man doing a job he doesn't have the stomach for, but lacks the courage to refuse. He pulls a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket and a cheap licorice root stick from another, chewing on the end of the sweet wood as he begins to speak. The simple, almost childish act is a grotesque counterpoint to the venom he is about to deliver. Sarah, he begins, not unkindly. By the authority of the court of Harmony Creek, I am here to serve you with this notice. He unfolds the paper and reads in a flat, official monotone. The language is dense with legal jargon, but its meaning is as clear and brutal as a hangman's noose. It is a formal warrant, signed by Judge Colton. It declares her a vagrant, a person with no visible means of support, and a public nuisance. A threat to the town's peace and moral order. The court, the sheriff continues, his eyes fixed on the paper, unable to look at her, has given you a grace period, 72 hours. 3 days from this moment to vacate the county limits. If you are found within the county after that time, you will be arrested, tried, and sentenced to a term of hard labor. The threat of hard labor is a death sentence. It means the convict leasing system, a brutal form of modern-day slavery, where prisoners, mostly black, are leased out to work in mines or on plantations under horrific conditions. It is a fate many considered worse than death. This is the cold, cruel heart of the debate between legal positivism and natural law. The sheriff is a positivist. He is merely enforcing a written rule from a recognized authority. It is the law, and that is all that matters to him. But you and Sarah stand on the side of a higher natural law. You know that while this piece of paper may be legal, it is profoundly and fundamentally unjust. It is a perversion of the law, a tool of oppression disguised as civic order. Sarah listens, her hands falling still. When he is finished, a long, heavy silence hangs in the hot, still air. She does not cry. She does not plead. She looks at Sheriff Gable, and her eyes are filled with a quiet, burning contempt that makes the big man flinch. "Is that all, Sheriff?" she asks, her voice steady. "That's all," he mumbles. He turns and walks away quickly, a man fleeing, the scene of his own moral crime. You wait until he is gone before you emerge from the mesquite. You walk up to her. She is still standing there, staring at the spot where the sheriff stood, the legal document now lying in the dust at her feet. Like a dead snake, the wall of her pride, so strong and unbending, finally begins to crack. A single tear traces a clean path through the dust on her cheek. "What am I going to do?" she whispers, the question not directed at you, but at the empty, hostile sky. "I have nowhere to go." You look at her, at this good, strong woman being systematically crushed by a corrupt system. You look at the warrant in the dust, a symbol of a law that has been twisted into a weapon against the innocent. You know that fighting this with secret gifts of food is like trying to stop a flood with a teacup. The judge has used the law to trap her dot, and in that moment, a desperate, radical idea begins to form in your mind. An idea that will take the judge's legal weapon and turn it back on him. A plan that is not about running, not about hiding, but about forging a new, unreachable legal reality. You look at the tears on her face, and you know you will do whatever it takes to keep her safe. The law has threatened her, and you will answer the law with a law of your own. Her question hangs in the small, stifling air of the cabin. What are we going to do? It is a question born of absolute despair, the cry of a soul that has been pushed to the very edge of the abyss. You look at the legal notice lying in the dust on the floor, a death sentence written on a piece of government paper. You look at her, at the single tear that has traced a path through the grime on her cheek, and the cold, hard fury that has been simmering in your gut for days finally crystallizes into a plan. Dot, it is a desperate plan, a reckless plan. It is the only plan you have. The judge is a smart man. You begin, your voice a low rumble, thinking the words through as you speak them. He's trapped you. He knows if you run, you'll likely die on the trail. He knows if you stay, he can use his own law to send you to a labor camp, which is another kind of death. You begin to pace the small room, your mind, so long clouded by your own ghosts, now working with a sharp, cold clarity. He's using the vagrancy law, a law for people with no home and no work. His mistake is that he thinks you have neither. She looks at you, her brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't have either, Jesse." "That's where he's wrong," you say, stopping to face her. "This is it, the moment you step off the cliff, taking her with you. I have a homestead, a small one, but it's mine, and I have a job for you." The silence that follows is more profound than any before it. She stares at you, her mind clearly struggling to comprehend your words. You press on, laying out the legal countermove, the one weapon you have against the judge's corrupt authority. "The law says you need a fixed place of abode. The cabin on my homestead will be your home. The law says you need a visible means of support. I am officially offering you a job as my housekeeper and cook. I will pay you a fair wage. With a home and a job, the vacancy warrant is void. It becomes a piece of worthless paper. This is the very heart of the great debate on the frontier. The judge and his allies see the legal theory of freedom of contract as a tool for the powerful, a way to justify exploitative labor systems like peonage. But you are attempting to wield it as a shield for the powerless. In theory, the law should protect the right of two free individuals to enter into a labor agreement. You are about to test if that theory holds any water in a town where justice is a commodity owned by one man. Abigail understands the logic of your plan instantly, but she also understands the terrible price. She is a proud, independent woman who has fought to make her own way. To accept your offer is to place yourself under the protection of a white man, to become his servant in the eyes of the world. The vile rumors the town has been whispering will only gain what they see as confirmation. She would be sacrificing her reputation to save her life. You see the war in her eyes. You see the proud freedwoman wrestling with the desperate survivor. You stand before her, a simple cowboy in a dusty hat, the silver of your tackleberry, buckle the only thing of shine on you, and you let her see the truth in your own eyes. This is not pity. This is not charity. This is an alliance. It is not the life you came here for, Sarah. You say, your voice softer now. It is not the life you deserve, but it is a life. And it is a way to fight back, to stand on your own 2 feet, on your own ground, and tell the judge and this whole damn town that you will not be erased. She looks around her small, bare cabin, a place that has been her only sanctuary. She looks at the warrant in the dust, and her gaze travels back to you, the one man in this entire territory who has shown her a shred of decency, the one man willing to stand with her against the storm god her chin lifts, and the fear in her eyes is burned away by a fire of pure, unadulterated resolve. I am a very good cook, Mr. Jesse, she says, a small, sad, but incredibly brave smile touching her lips. You will not be disappointed in your new hire. The pact is sealed, not with a handshake, but with a shared look of grim determination. The legal document on the floor is now just a piece of paper. The judge's trap has been sprung, but you have found a way to break its teeth. Be ready at dawn. You say, your own voice filled with a new, dangerous energy. Gather what you can carry. We'll load up the wagon. They will see us. She says the word's a statement, not a question. Yes, you reply, a cold, hard smile on your own face. That's the point. You are no longer a ghost leaving offerings in the dark. You are about to become a public rebel. The act of offering a simple job, of hiring a housekeeper, has become your final, open act of defiance. And you will make sure the whole town is there to watch you do it. Dawn breaks over Harmony Creek, not with a fiery spectacle, but with a quiet, pearly gray light that promises another day of suffocating heat. You arrive at Sarah's cabin as the first roosters begin to crow. The sound of your buckboard wagon's wheels a lonely, deliberate intrusion into the town's slumber. You are not here to be a ghost. You are here to make a statement, and you want the whole town to hear it. She is ready, waiting on her small porch. Her few belongings are neatly stacked beside her. A single battered trunk holding her clothes and personal effects. A rocking chair, its wood worn smooth with age. A few crates containing pots, pans, and the simple tools of a household. And among them, a small but precious quilt, its intricate patterns telling a story of a family's journey to freedom. It is a freedom quilt, a tangible link to the great Exodus movement, a testament to the thousands of black families who, like her, journeyed west seeking a life free from the suffocating prejudice of the South. You and she worked together in Kant, the cool, quiet air, loading her meager life onto your wagon. It is a swift and silent process, the work of two people with a single unspoken purpose. When you are finished, you help her up onto the wagon seat. She settles herself. Her back is straight and proud as a queen ascending to a throne. Then the performance begins. You take the reins, and you do not take the short path out of town. You deliberately steer the horse onto the main street. The empty sack of flour you bought her still a pale ghost in the back of the wagon. You guide the horse into a slow, deliberate walk, a pace just short of a funeral procession. This is a social drama, and you are directing its one and only act. You are forcing the town to witness this breach of their unwritten code, to look upon the alliance they tried so hard to prevent. The town begins to wake. Curtains twitch in the windows of the houses. The baker, just opening his shop, freezes, a tray of rolls in his hands, his mouth agape. As you proceed down the street, people emerge, drawn by the quiet spectacle. Henderson, the storekeeper, stands on his porch, wringing his hands, his face pale with fear of the judge's reprisal. Baudry, the blacksmith, emerges from his forge. His face a mask of pure, impotent rage. They stare, and you let them. You keep your eyes fixed forward, your expression a cold, hard mask of indifference. Beside you, Sarah does the same, her gaze locked on the horizon, refusing to grant the gawking townspeople the satisfaction of seeing her fear. She is no longer the invisible woman. She is now the most visible person in Harmony Creek, and her visibility is an act of breathtaking defiance. You pass the saloon, its doors still closed, a sleeping monster. You pass the sheriff's office, and you see Sheriff Abel watching from behind the glass, a helpless, defeated man. You are openly defying the legal threat he delivered, and he is doing nothing. His authority is shown to be as hollow as a dead tree. Finally, you approach the courthouse. You look up at the second-story window of Judge Colton's chambers. He is there, as you knew he would be. He is standing in the window, fully dressed, watching your procession. He is not angry. His face is a mask of cold, reptilian fury. He has been outmaneuvered. You have taken his legal threat and rendered it void, and you have done it in a way that publicly humiliates him, using the very woman he tried to erase as your standard-bearer. You meet his gaze across the dusty street. You give him a slow, deliberate nod. It is a greeting. It is a challenge. It is a declaration of war. You click the reins, and the wagon rolls past the last building of the town. The hostile silence of Harmony Creek is now at your back. Before you is the wide, open prairie, the long, dusty road that leads to your homestead. The sun is higher now, casting its golden light over the endless expanse of grass. You look at Sarah. She turns and looks at you, and for the first time, a small, brave smile touches her lips. It is a smile of shared victory, of a shared future. You have burned the bridges. You have defied the judge. You have taken your stand. You are no longer just a man helping a woman. You are two outcasts, two rebels, two partners, riding together into a new and dangerous life of your own making. The peace on your homestead is a fragile, delicate thing, a thin pane of glass waiting for the stone you know is coming. You and Sarah work together, establishing a new rhythm of life on the small, isolated patch of land. You mend fences. She plants a larger garden. You speak little, but a deep, powerful understanding grows in the shared silence. You are partners. You are allies. And you are both acutely aware that you are living on borrowed time. The stone arrives at dusk. It starts not as a sound, but as a tremor in the earth, the distant, rhythmic drumming of many horses approaching at a steady, determined pace. You are on the porch, cleaning your rifle when you feel it. You look up and see a cloud of dust rising against the blood red of the setting sun. It's not a trail herd. It's a column of riders. Sarah, get inside, you say, your voice a low, hard command. Bar the door, and stay away from the windows. She looks at your face, sees the grim certainty in your eyes, and does as you say without a word. Heavy thud of the door bar falling into place is a lonely, final sound. You stand on the porch, your Winchester rifle resting in the crook of your arm, and you wait. They ride out of the dust and the dying light, a posse of at least 20 men, their faces hard and set in the flickering glow of the torches they carry. They are the men from the town, the blacksmith Baudry, the store owner Henderson, farmers, ranch hands. And at their head, riding a fine black moray, is Judge Colton. This is not a lynch mob in the traditional, chaotic sense. This is something far more sinister. It is a vigilante committee, a group of so-called concerned citizens, organized and led by the town's most powerful man to enforce his will under the thin disguise of civic duty. One of the men near the front carries a long, coiled bullwhip on his saddle, a clear and ugly symbol of the kind of justice they intend to dispense. They stop just beyond rifle range. A silent, menacing line of horsemen. Judge Colton rides forward. Alone, he stops 20 yards from your porch. "Jesse," he calls out, his voice calm and reasonable, the voice of a man who believes he holds all the cards. "There is no need for this to end in bloodshed. We are not here to harm you. We are here on behalf of the good people of Harmony Creek to remove a dangerous and morally corrupting influence from our community. This is the timeless conflict of the frontier. The judge is arguing for the will of the mob, for a twisted version of positive law where the community's prejudice becomes its own justification. You, standing alone on your porch, are the final defense of a person's natural right to simply exist, to be safe in her own home regardless of a town's fear and hatred. This is my property. Judge, you call back, your own voice flat and even. Sarah is my employee. You have no legal standing to be here. Turn your men around and ride home." "I am the law in this county, son," Colton says, his voice losing its patient edge. "And my presence here makes this legal. We will have the woman. You can either step aside, or you will be removed with her." The men of the posse shift in their saddles, their rifles held a little tighter. The moment is stretched taut as a wire. You raise your Winchester to your shoulder, the motion smooth and practiced. You will not fire first, but you will fire. You will die on this porch before you let them take her. The ghost of the boy at the hanging tree is at your shoulder, and this time you will not fail. Just as the judge is about to give the signal to charge, the cabin door behind you creaks open. "Elias, no," a quiet voice says. "It's Sarah." She steps out onto the porch, her father's heavy Bible held in her hands. "Get back inside, Sarah." You hiss, not taking your eyes off the mob, but she ignores you. She walks to the edge of the porch and stands beside you. She is not cowering. She is not pleading. Her face is calm, and her eyes are filled with a fire that seems to burn away the dusk. She does not look at the men of the posse. She looks directly at Judge Colton. "Judge," she says, her voice clear and carrying in the sudden, tense silence. "You claim to be a man of the law. I ask you, then, to honor it." She holds up the Bible, but I will not quote scripture to you. I will quote the law of the United States. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution guarantees all citizens, equal protection under the law. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 affirms my right to make contracts and hold property. A confused murmur ripples through the posse. They came here to intimidate a woman they'd been told was a vagrant and a whore. They did not come here for a lesson in federal law from a woman who speaks with more intelligence and authority than any of them. You are not a posse. Judge Colton, Sarah says, her voice rising with a preacher's righteous power. You are a mob gathered here illegally to terrorize a citizen on her own property. And every man who rides with you is an accomplice to that crime. She has done the impossible. She has confronted a mob not with a weapon, but with an idea. She has held up the mirror of the very law they claim to represent, and she has shown them the ugly, lawless truth of who they are. The men shift uncomfortably, their certainty beginning to waver. They look at the judge, their leader, waiting for him to refute her. But he cannot. He is stunned into silence, his face a mask of pure, murderous rage. His authority, built on a foundation of prejudice and fear, is crumbling under the weight of a few powerful words of truth. The standoff is not over, but its very nature has been transformed. Sarah's courage has just disarmed an army. The silence that follows Sarah's words is a fragile, crystalline thing. It hangs in the dusky air, holding 20 armed men in a state of suspended animation. They are no longer a righteous posse. They are a confused and shamed mob. They're simple. Hatred now complicated by the undeniable weight of federal law. Judge Colton's face is a thundercloud of pure fury, his authority challenged, his narrative shattered. He opens his mouth to speak, to reignite their anger with a fresh lie. But the words are stolen from him by a new sound, a single horse approaching at a steady, unhurried trot. Every head turns toward the road. A lone rider emerges from the twilight. He is an older man, his back straight in the saddle, his long duster coat the color of the road itself. He is not a cowboy. He is not a rancher. He rides with an air of weary, implacable purpose. On the hip of his big gray horse, you see a small, clear brand, the letters U.S. He rides directly into the tense space between the posse and your porch, his horse never breaking its steady gait. He pulls to a halt, a granite island in a sea of uncertainty. The star pinned to his duster is not the cheap tin of a town sheriff. It is the heavy, silver star of a U.S. Marshal. He ignores the mob, his gaze settling first on Judge Colton, the clear leader of the assembly. That's a big group of armed men to be paying a social call, Judge, the marshal says, his voice a low, gravelly sound, devoid of any emotion. The Posse Comitatus Act has some mighty specific things to say about using armed bodies to enforce civil matters. Judge Colton, his face a mask of false sincerity, quickly recovers. Marshal, a welcome surprise. This is merely a committee of concerned citizens. We are here to peaceably escort an undesirable element from our township for the safety of our families. The marshal's eyes, cold and gray as a winter sky, slowly scan the posse, the torches, the rifles, the coiled bullwhip on one man's saddle. Your concern looks an awful lot like a lynch mob from where I'm sitting, he says, his voice flat. He then turns his gaze to you and Sarah, standing on the porch. And you folks? This is the central conflict of the frontier justice system playing out in your front yard. The raw, coercive power of a local tyrant versus the formal federal authority of a marshal. This is the great American debate on federalism, and in this moment, you are praying the federal government wins. Lower your rifle slightly, a sign of respect for the badge. Marshal, my name is Jesse. This is my homestead. The lady is Sarah, my employee. These men, led by the judge, are trespassing on my property with the stated intent to do us harm. The marshal looks at Sarah, his expression unreadable. And what do you say, ma'am? Sarah steps forward, her voice as clear and steady as it was moments before. I say that I am a citizen of the United States, Marshal, and I have claimed the equal protection of its laws. The only danger here is from the man who would deny me that right. The marshal listens, his gaze never leaving her face. He has spent 30 years riding the circuit, listening to every kind of lie and half-truth the West has to offer. He is a man who can recognize the ring of truth when he hears it. He turns his horse to face the posse, the movement slow and deliberate. "I have heard enough," he announces, his voice now carrying the full, unshakable weight of federal law. "This is an illegal assembly. You are ordered to disperse and return to your homes. Any man who remains will be arrested and tried in a federal court for armed insurrection." A wave of fear, more powerful than Judge Colton's influence, ripples through the mob. The thought of facing a federal judge is a terror far greater than disappointing their local boss. This is a local matter. "Marshal!" Colton sputters, his authority evaporating before his eyes. "Not anymore," the marshal says, his voice as cold as a grave. "You brought 20 men with torches and rifles to a private homestead. You made it a federal matter the second you decided your personal feelings were more important than the United States Constitution." He looks past the judge at the men behind him. "Go home," he says, his voice a low command. The posse dissolves. They turn their horses, avoiding each other's eyes, and melt back into the darkness, their righteous fury now a toxic mix of shame and fear. In seconds, the threatening mob is just a collection of embarrassed men riding away. Judge Colton is left alone, isolated and utterly defeated, his army gone, his power broken. He glares at you, his face a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. Then, without another word, he wheels his horse around and gallops back toward town. The U.S. Marshal watches him go, then looks at you and Sarah. "You folks might want to watch your backs," he says, a grim understatement. "A snake-like. That stays dangerous even after you pull its fangs." He tips his hat, a gesture of weary respect, turns his horse, and continues his journey down the road, a lone figure of the law, disappearing back into the twilight. You are left in the sudden, profound quiet, the smell of torch smoke and fear still hanging in the air. The standoff is over. You have won. The departure of the U.S. Marshal leaves a profound and deafening silence in its wake. The posse, which had been a single monstrous beast of hatred, has disintegrated into 20 shamefaced, frightened men scurrying back to their homes. You and Sarah stand on the porch of your small cabin, the scent of extinguished torches and fear still sharp in the cool night air. The immediate battle is over, but the war for the soul of Harmony Creek has just entered its final, decisive phase. The judge's power was never in the law. It was in the illusion that he was the law. The marshal, with his quiet, unshakable authority, shattered that illusion. In the days that follow, you witness the slow, grinding collapse of a tyrant's reign. The men who rode with the judge now avoid him in the street. They are terrified of federal charges, and their loyalty, which was only ever an extension of their fear, has vanished. The foundation of hate the judge built his power upon has crumbled, and he is now a king without a kingdom. The town itself begins a slow and painful reckoning. The silence that once met Sarah on the street is now replaced by something else. Awkward, hesitant glances, and then, eventually, quiet nods of respect. The first to break is Miller, the store owner. He finds you outside the livery stable one morning, his hat in his hands, his face a miserable portrait of shame. He apologizes, not just to you, but asks you to pass his apology to Mrs. Jessie. It is not a full-throated cry for justice, but it is a start. It is an act of restorative justice, a small, personal attempt to repair the harm that has been done. This is how a town soul is cleansed. Not in a great, fiery moment of revelation, but in 1,000 small, quiet acts of decency that slowly push back against the darkness. You and Sarah begin to build a life. The homestead, which had been a fortress, a defensive position in a long siege, now starts to feel like a home. You work together in the daylight, your partnership no longer a secret, but a simple, accepted fact of life on the prairie. You repair the roof of the small cabin. She plants a vegetable garden, her hands coaxing life from the hard Texas soil. The constant, gnawing tension of waiting for the next attack is gone, replaced by the simple, satisfying ache of a body tired. From honest work, the central debate of this land has always been about the individual versus the community. For so long, you were the rugged individual, a man alone against the world. But that individualism was a prison of your own making. It was only by forming an alliance, a community of two, that you found the strength to fight back. And it was only when the town's decent folk were shamed out of their collective cowardice that true peace could be found. The frontier, you learn, does not reward the lone wolf. It rewards the strong pack. One afternoon, you see Judge Colton walking down the main street, but his proud, authoritative stride is gone. His shoulders are slumped. And as he walks, the people of the town, the same people who once turned their backs on Sarah now, turn their backs on him. They cross the street to avoid him. They find sudden interest in shop windows. The shunning, the tool of social death he wielded with such cruelty, is now turned upon him. It is a quiet, poetic, and devastating justice. A week later, he is gone. He sells his holdings for a fraction of their worth to the town banker, and leaves on the morning stage, a bitter, broken man. The poison has been purged. That evening, you and Sarah sit on the porch, watching the sunset. The air is clean. The sounds from the town are no longer menacing, but the simple, peaceful sounds of a community at rest. You have won. You have faced down a mob, defied a tyrant, and shattered a town's wall of hate. You look at Sarah, her profile serene in the golden light, and you realize the job you offered her, the legal fiction you created to protect her, is the last lie standing between you. The war is over. And in the quiet peace that follows, a new, more terrifying, and far more beautiful question begins to form in your heart. The weeks that follow the judge's departure are like the quiet, clean air after a long and violent storm. A new peace settles over your homestead, a peace so profound it feels almost fragile, as if a loud noise might shatter it. The rhythm of your gaze is no longer dictated by fear and vigilance, but by the simple, honest work of the land. You and Sarah are a silent, efficient team. You mend the barn roof. She weeds the garden. You hunt for game. She cooks it over the hearth. The imaginary line between your roles, employer and employee, has long since been erased by shared hardship and mutual respect. The homestead itself begins to heal. The garden, tended by her skilled hands and watered by the well you dug together, begins to thrive. Green shoots of corn and beans push their way up through the dark, rich soil. Life is returning to the land. One evening, you are sitting together on the porch, watching the last of the sun's fire bleed across the horizon. The air is cool and smells of dust and the fragrant prairie tea she has brewed from wildflowers. In the comfortable silence, the last unspoken truth, the final ghost of your arrangement, sits between you. You are the one who must give it a voice. You owe her that. Sarah, you begin, your voice a low rumble in the quiet. You look out, eh? The vast, empty parcel of land that borders your own to the north. The Homestead Act allows for a single person to file a claim. There's a good patch of land just over that rise. I could help you build a cabin, help you get started. You'd be your own woman on your own land, safe. It is the final, most honest gift you can offer her, her freedom. You are releasing her from the contract, from the desperate pact you made. You are giving her the choice you both know she never truly had before. She is silent for a long time, her hands wrapped around the warm tin cup of tea. She looks out at the land you described. Then her gaze returns to the small, humble cabin behind you, to the garden, to the rocking chair she salvaged from her wagon. The woman who arrived in this town wanted that more than anything. She says softly, a piece of land that was hers alone, a place where no one could tell her what to do or who to be. She looks at you, her eyes dark and serious in the fading light. But the frontier, it doesn't care much for what you think you want. It gives you what you need. This is the hard-won truth for both of you. The old 19th century ideal of separate spheres, a man's world of work and a woman's world of home, is a fiction out here. Survival demanded a partnership that transcended those rigid lines. She has been your political strategist and your moral compass. You have been her protector and her provider. You have not lived in separate spheres. You have held up one world together. I don't want another piece of land, Jesse, she says, her voice a near whisper. My home, it's already built. She reaches out and places her hand on your knee. The touch is a quiet explosion. It is here, with you. If you will have me, not as your housekeeper, but as your wife. In truth, the last of your defenses crumbles. The ghost of the boy at the hanging tree, the ghost you have carried for so long, finally falls silent. You have spent your life running from the failure of that night, believing you were a coward, unworthy of peace or love. But this woman, this incredible, brave woman, has given you a chance to face that ghost and find redemption. You did not stand by. You acted. And in doing so, you saved not only her, but yourself. Sarah, you say, your voice thick with an emotion you can no longer name or hide. I thought this homestead was just a place to wait for the end, a place to be alone with my ghosts. You are the one who made it a home. You are the one who made me feel like a man again, not just a shadow. You take her hand, your calloused, scarred fingers lacing through hers. You lean in and kiss her. It is not a kiss of passion, but one of profound, quiet reverence. It is a kiss of homecoming, a kiss that seals a vow far deeper and truer than any spoken before a judge. You hold each other on the porch as the stars begin to emerge, a brilliant, cold spray of diamonds against the black velvet of the sky. The homestead is no longer a monument to a painful past, but the foundation of a future you will build together. Your long, lonely watch is over. You are finally home. The fire in your hearth has burned down to a bed of glowing, ruby embers pulsing softly in the dark. The story is told, the dust has settled, and a deep and lasting peace has fallen over the small homestead on the Texas prairie. Outside, the moon rises, casting a gentle silver light on a world that has been cleansed. The town of Harmony Creek sleeps in the distance, its name no longer a cruel joke, but a quiet promise. The ghosts of the past have been laid to rest, not by vengeance, but by the steady, courageous love of two people who refuse to be broken. Theirs is a story whispered on the wind, a testament to the fact that even in the harshest, most hateful of lands, a single, defiant act of kindness can be enough to build a home, to forge a future, and to light a candle bright enough to push back the darkest of nights. The journey is over. The home is safe. End of script. Sweet dreams.